So let's start. The agenda for today. First of all, we will give you an introduction from the smart pricer perspective into the world of price optimization in the attraction and museum business. The second part will then be taken over by Steffi, who will give us an introduction into how dynamic pricing works at the Chocoversum in Hamburg. And the third part basically is you can raise your questions. You can use the chat function in the webinar to shoot us your questions, and we will answer them. Steffi and I will answer them live during the webinar. Every question that you have during the presentation, just shoot them, text us, and we will cover them later on in the webinar. So let's start with the first point, the introduction. We at Smart Pricer, we've run more than 50 price optimization projects around the world now in attractions and the museum business. And in those projects, we are, we more or less are finding out that there's a big misunderstanding sometimes around the terms of dynamic pricing and pricing itself. So first of all, we would like to give you an introduction in what we understand around dynamic pricing. Let's use the example of the IAPA. The IAPA is hosted next week in Paris. It's one of the, or I think the largest convention that is happening around the attraction business. Everybody flies to Paris. Like most of the people going there, they will use the airplane. So this is how we travel to come to Paris. We use the airplane. How we book, mostly we will use the online. So we will use our laptops or our PCs to research and book our flights online. And the price, obviously the price is differing a lot between when you book, when I booked, when my team booked. So there's a lot of price differentiation when you book your flight coming to Paris. We are all aware of this, and everybody pays a different price. We just looked up here the prices for Berlin to Paris during the September month, and there's a big variation, a big spread across weekdays and also across high demand days. So there's a big spread around the price. But how do airlines actually do it? How do they make us pay a different price for the same route, for the same route that we actually fly from Berlin, for example, to Paris? For example, Stephanie pays 100 euro and I pay 150 euro. The key word or the key term behind is called segmentation. So basically the airlines, what they do, they segment their customers based on two different things. First of all, it's the product itself. So, and we are all aware of this, if you fly business class, you have extra luggage, you have extra leg space, you have a whole different level of service. So this is one product. Obviously, the economy class is a different product and therefore priced differently. So the first thing that airlines actually do is differentiation or segmentation by product or service level. The second one is a very important one, which is they also segment by booking behavior. For example, Stephanie paid a lower price. She only paid 100 euro because she booked a lot earlier. And she also selected a low demand flight. So this is why she paid only 100 euro. I, on my side, I booked late and I have a high demand flight. So this is why I paid 150 euro. So we already see that the prices are differentiated between Steffi booking a flight and me booking a flight. So the term of dynamic pricing, so that the price actually changes for your product that you consume has spread from the airlines to many other industries by now. And today, we are all faced with changing prices. And it starts, for example, also in car rentals. So if you go for Hertz or for Sixt, the price for your car rental obviously changes, even for the same type of car that you want to rent. It's also in the online retail business. So products that you buy online and shop online, there are constant price optimization. Public transportation, bus transportation, train transportation, there the concept of dynamic pricing is deployed, hotels and even in the supermarkets. We are all surrounded by changing prices. And even in industries where some of you are aware and some of you might not be aware of, the concept of a changing price for the same product is being used to optimize own business goals. I mean, we know the concept in the parking industry, we know it in the museum industry, we have zoo examples also in the webinar for you to show We have the sports example. So whenever you have an arena or your sports club, you can use pricing or dynamic pricing to actually achieve your business goals. Ski, big market at the moment, especially in the Swiss market, currently growing. There's a lot of attention and attraction going on with dynamic pricing in the ski market. Concert business, so whenever there's Rihanna touring the world, obviously the dynamic pricing concept is something that can help them sell out the concert and make more revenue in the end. And today we focus on the attraction business. So how dynamic pricing can help the attraction business make more of their actually daily work. So diving more into the attraction business, why do so many industries embark on a journey towards dynamic pricing? So why do all of those industries start with the concept of dynamic pricing? So first look into it and then actually deploy it. They all have the same common problems and the same goals that they want to optimize. The three challenges that we see across all of the industries are they have a varying utilization of capacity. So this means you have a fixed capacity and the demand is fluctuating every day. They obviously want to grow their ticketing or their revenue. They want to make more money in the end. And in the age of digitalization, they obviously also want to boost their online sales. They want to have more people buying in advance. They want to have more people buying online. All those three goals are common across all of those industries. And what they want to achieve, for example, with the different capacity utilization is they want to actively manage capacity. And this is something that we will later on with Steffi will speak about and how she actually uses this to basically manage her capacity more actively in the Chocoversum Museum in Hamburg. The second goal is obviously we also want to increase demand at off-peak times. We all know that we have those peaks and we have also those valleys. And in those valleys, we obviously want to stimulate demand. And pricing and dynamic pricing can help to actually do this. Just remember the example of the airline flight where Steffi selected an airline flight which was in a low demand period. So she saved money, but still, basically, she was triggered, she was stimulated towards a lower price, but also increased the load of this specific flight. Yeah, growing ticketing revenue. I mean, this is something that is, I think, common and should be one of the goal, or should be the goal for all of us here in the topic of price optimization, attraction, and museum business. We want to ensure growth. We want to ensure profitability. We have rising costs, so we need to account for this. We need to make sure that we look for new, innovative way of increasing our revenue, and obviously, yeah, boosting online sales. We want to get people buying early, make their purchase decision, give us their email address, learn about them, and basically have them as a pre-sales. So those three goals are common across all of those industries. In the next step, we want to kind of look into and make sure that everybody understands what we believe in dynamic pricing and also clear out a bit of the misunderstandings that might be out there in the market. So we see the evolution of pricing happening in three steps. The first step is what we consider static pricing. So basically the price, regardless of the demand, in blue here, for example, you see varying demand. This could be, for example, a Saturday, then we have a Wednesday and a Thursday. And basically the attraction business or the museum, for example, has only one price. So the price, you can see here, is static. So one size fits all. This is a typical setup that we see when we work together with museums, for example. So they don't take into account different demand patterns and demand situations in order to react then with the price. The second one is what we call differentiated pricing. So this means, for example, based on a weekday or based on if you buy online or offline, attractions start to differentiate their pricing. So they start to look into the data, they start to think about how can I use prices to kind of start achieving those first goals. For example, you have the season, the holiday season periods, obviously you want to have maybe a higher price. But this is still very static. This is fixed for certain time periods or for certain point of sales, for example, online. And the third one is actually the true dynamic pricing. This is when we speak about dynamic pricing, this is what we mean. So that the price, in the sense, follows the predicted or the ticket sales, which means if ticket sales are changing, the prices are also changing. And there are no fixed rules anymore that it says from the 1st of June to the end of June, there's this price available, in July, there's this price available. If this is the case, we consider this differentiated pricing. In dynamic pricing, those rules are not existent anymore. So basically, the price actually really follows the demand. So you can also see this here in green, the price reacts in certain limits. It follows basically the sales pattern. So this is when we speak about, or this is how we see true dynamic pricing. I would like to give you in the next minutes some examples, and we looked across Europe to actually find some good examples into where we consider certain attractions or museums in what state of the evolution in pricing. And one of the examples that we have our famous Neuschwanstein Castle here in Germany, and we checked them out on their website. And they, for example, they have here for adults, they have €13 fixed price, which means even if they have high demand situations, they still will always charge €13. So it's the same price for every day, for every time, for every demand situation, and for every point of sale, for example, the website. This is one example, what we call static pricing. And most of the museums and attractions are still operating with some sort of static pricing. The second example that we included here in this webinar is the Europapark Rust, and we took the Europapark Rust as an example for a differentiated pricing. You can see here on the right side, they have a summer and winter period. And this summer and winter period, for example, here for the adults, they have a €5 price differentiation. So this means the Europapark already took the first step, and they basically differ already their pricing based on season time. And season time obviously correlates to expected demand. The second example is the Chocoversum in Amsterdam. This Choco Museum already did two steps. First of all, they're differentiated between online versus offline. So you get a discount if you buy online compared if you go to the box office or if you go offline. So there's an incentive to buy online. You can see this here. For example, the adult price is €15. If you come online and buy online now, you can save €1. So first of all, they already differentiate by point of sale. Now they incentivize the online. Second one, they do peak time protections, or they start introducing discounts for less demand situations. You can see this here, and this is also nicely nicely supported by a color coding. Here you can see in green, for example, that you get a 10% discount if you come at 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock correlates to a low demand situation on this Friday in August, 16th of August. So overall, they use the concept of increasing, you remember those values I was relating earlier, they use pricing as a mechanism to increase demand and stimulate demand in those lower demand situations here. And last, one example for the dynamic pricing world. Here, for example, we have the Indianapolis Zoo. So even the zoos, in this case, it's in the US, they started deploying a dynamic pricing model. Just to give you 3 insights on what they actually do. First of all, they are very transparent. So they use color coding, and you can see actually here that prices in green, for example, for adult is $11.95, $12.45, up to $14.20. So there's a lot of different price points. And they use pricing actually to protect those Saturdays and Sundays when everybody wants to go to the zoo. They want to use this obviously to increase their average revenue they make per ticket, but also to protect the experience in the zoo. So they're very transparent with their color coding and communication. This is a screenshot from their website. They also deploy a very transparent communication and how to save money. So basically, if you buy in advance and if you buy early, you can save. If you come to the box office and the cashier desk, you will definitely get a higher price. They also provide a so-called projected attendance, which helps transporting to the customer. Okay, if it's a low demand day, you can get a cheaper price. But if you select Sunday good weather, for example, the price might increase, and attendance might be higher. So this is one example that we really like in the very transparent communication and how dynamic pricing is deployed. In this case, it's a zoo, and they use it for daily business. This was from our side a quick introduction, and this is only a couple of minutes to cover it, but this was a quick introduction into how we see pricing developing on the one side, and secondly, also making sure that we all understand what are the benefits of dynamic pricing, and that we all understand what actually true dynamic pricing is from our perspective. In the second part of this webinar, we are very pleased and honored that Steffi joined our webinar in order to give insights from the Chocoversum from Hamburg and how they use pricing in their daily operations, in their daily work, and what are the problems, what are the challenges, but also what are the results. So Steffi, the stage is yours. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Okay, thank you, Franz. Can you give me a sign if my microphone is working? Is everything good?
Perfectly working.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Before starting and talking about pricing, I want to introduce myself. As Franz already said, my name is Steffi. I'm living in Hamburg. I'm working in the hospitality, museum, and attraction industry since 15 years. And this is really my passion. I love being a host. I love to work in this industry. And for me, pricing is really a part of being service orientated. I want to, first of all, show the Chocoversum for those who don't know us. The Chocoversum is in Hamburg, and it's a privately owned museum. It has just 800 square meters, but we do have 200,000 guests per year. This is really, really good number, I think. And we opened up in November 2011. The Chocoversum has a cooperation partner in the chocolate industry, which is Schaub. Schaub is from Bremen. But as I already said, the museum itself is privately owned. We have 95 team members here at Chocoversum. We do need all those team members because every guest gets a tour. This means if you come to us, if you visit us, you buy a ticket in the ticketing office, and then you start a 90 minutes tour, which is always led by one of our team members. As you can see on this picture at the moment, the tour starts with a chocolate fountain. So the first thing is that our guests can really enjoy some hot chocolate with waffle. This is really the best station for our guests, I think. You can hear a lot of guests screaming when they enter this room. But Chocoversum is not only about fun. We want to show our guests where is chocolate come from, how does a cocoa fruit look like. And this you can see on the next picture. Every guest can enjoy a fresh chocolate brew within the tour and really understand how chocolate is made. I think it's really interesting to see and to taste the chocolate fruit because it doesn't taste at all with chocolate. So our guests really can understand during the 90 minutes tour how chocolate is made. We have 13 stops to try cocoa and every step of the product, and of course to try chocolate. On the pictures you see now, we give the guests the opportunity to really eat chocolate in a proper way, because we all know chocolate is something which makes us happy. We eat it at our desk in the office, but it's of course something you can really enjoy and to talk about with a good wine. This is what we want to share with our guests too. And please go on to the next slide. One of the highlights for our guests is that they can create their own chocolate bar. I think this is the reason why they visit us at Chocoversum. And this is really what they want to take home, what they share, what they eat. And at the end, this is the picture you can see now, they go to our shop where we have over 100 products for chocolate lovers. I think every chocoholic, how we call our guests sometimes, will get really happy in our shop. One of our most bought product is, for example, chocolate noodles or a magic chocolate wand from Harry Potter. But yeah, it's not about talking about the Chocoversum and what our guests really can enjoy. Today we want to talk about prices. But again, before talking about prices, I want to share with you our guest structure. Because what I think is really, really good to know is that we have 30% of group guests at Chocoversum and 70% of individual guests. As group guests, we mean, for example, school kids or senior groups or companies coming to us, and those guests are always pre-booked. So they call us via phone or they write us an email, they book a certain time slot, and then they will arrive at Chocoversum. The individual guests, they come more how they have time. They are, for example, tourists in Hamburg, and they want to know, yeah, what kind of attraction do I want to see in Hamburg, and this is how they come to us. The group guests, as I already said, is 30%, and even 25% of all our guests are school kids. Those school kids are very, very price sensitive. But they are really loved guests because, as I already said, they book in advance and they plan their trip to us. And what I think is really, really good about them is that they're coming to a time where no one else is really coming to us. For example, today we opened up at 7:30 in the morning and the first guest started their tour at 7:45. I don't know how this can happen, so my phone is ringing. That people are coming that early to us. But this is why we really love our group guests. And on the other hand, I already said, we have our individual guests. They are mostly tourists who visit Hamburg. They are not very price sensitive, but they are time sensitive. Because, for example, when it's raining in Hamburg and every other attraction is already fully booked, they really have stress and they want to go into an indoor attraction to have a good time and to be sheltered from the rain. So they are not very price sensitive, but what they want is to get in our attraction now, whatever it costs. And before we started doing different prices, we had 50 days where we were fully booked already at 1 o'clock. And this was really not nice for our guests when they are arriving at Chocoversum and we were already fully booked. And this was the time when I thought about differentiation with the prices, because I don't want to see all those sad faces of our guests because we are fully booked at 1 o'clock. So I thought about what can be the strategy. And this is where I heard the first time about flexible prices when I visited the IAPA in Barcelona. As I already said right at the beginning, for me, having different prices is about being very guest focused. Having flexible prices means that you do not exclude guest groups because you always higher prices. And we all know when we always higher our prices, there will be a point where we lose guests. If we lose guests from the group guests because they are very price sensitive, or we lose guests, for example, in the senior age because our price always gets higher. On the other hand, we have frequent guests. They book every year. All those teachers, they book in advance in January. They come every year to us with their school kids. And when we always change our prices, they don't trust us anymore. So for me, having those flexible prices for frequent guests is really building trust with those guest groups. On the other hand, we have this time-sensitive guests, which means, as I said, it's rainy in Hamburg. They don't care how much it costs now. They really want to get indoor and they want to enjoy our tour. And what I think is really crazy is that those guests are always the happiest guests. It's crazy when it's raining in Hamburg and our adventure is really packed. The people are smiling because they are happy. Yes, we get in here, we have a tour, we can have a good time for 90 minutes now. On the other hand, we have this price-sensitive guests. They are planning their trip to Hamburg very early because they want to save money, they want to best price, and this is what we can offer with those flexible prices. You're really honored when you book in advance. You can have a tour for 12 euro, which is much more cheaper than paying the full price, which is 70 euro. And which Franz already said is the stretch the demand peaks. I know everybody who works in an adventure knows it's not very nice when it's that full. It's not nice for our team. It's not nice for the guests. It's not nice for the processes. We don't like fully packed attractions because we know we cannot make anyone happy now. So this is what I really thought about. I don't like my attraction to be packed with 1,400 guests per day. I would love to have 1,000 guests per day every day, but not those fully packed days. So as I said, for me, it's a lot about guest focus. Being very flexible with the prices means that you have more guests which are price sensitive, time sensitive. You can make everybody happy when they are planning in advance. But of course, having different prices is about economic reasons too. When we started with the flexible prices, I already said that we were nearly packed 50 days per year. So we had to close down at 1 o'clock because we were fully booked. And this was the only idea to change the prices to ensure growth. So the one idea was, I can hire the prices, then I can, I have more revenue and I keep my guest number stable. But this was not my idea. I think it's much more nicer to spread the guests, to have a stable, as I said, just 1,000 guests per day. But on the other hand, we can ensure the growth. So we could, with changing the price model, change the guest number from 200,000 guests to 220,000 guests, just because we have flexible prices in the early mornings and in the evenings. On the other hand, there is economic reason, for example, the planning method. As I said, Chocoversum can only be visited by a tour. So I think everybody knows that we have a lot of personnel costs. The personnel costs are the highest cost we have here at Chocoversum. So when I know that those tours are not booked, no guest has booked a ticket, I can cancel a tour and I can ask my team member if he wants to go home, or I can find a different work for him. So it means that I can lower down my personnel costs. And on the other hand, I really want to fight against Petrus and the weather. I know it's a problem for everyone when it's for an indoor attraction. When there's nice weather outside, we are not that fully booked. When it's raining, we are too crowded. And for me, using those flexible prices is a supreme discipline to fight against the weather. To be honest, I have not... Petrus is still winning, but I have the hope that in 3 to 4 years we can fight against him and we will win. So that more people are pre-booking and we have a stable guest number, even though it's nice weather outside. Okay, these were the reasons why we thought about flexible prices. Now I want to share with you the steps we took for changing the prices. So the first step is that you need to form a project team. You really need your marketing and sales team and your ticketing team behind your back. They need to be on fire for the idea for flexible prices, because if they're not, it can ruin this project, because it's all about communication, authentic communication. So when those people, are not on fire for flexible prices, this will really cause you a lot of troubles. The next thing is that you have to set your targets. Why do you change your prices? What is the result you want to have? Do you want to have higher revenue? Do you want to stretch the guest numbers? And yeah, what are your targets? Set them so you can talk to every stakeholder about this setting, that they can really understand your focus. The next step is talk to experts. This was really it opened my eyes, because I heard a lot of things, what I have to keep in mind with my online shop, what I have to keep in mind with the communication, what I have to keep in mind with the team members. So talking to others really prepares you to speak with your probably hardest stakeholder, your shareholders, because then you already have some knowledge about this topic and you can convince the shareholders. For me, I think the shareholders, they don't have to be on fire like your project team, but they should support the idea. I think if they don't, it probably you won't have your job anymore, or I don't know. But I think it's very good to have them in back. It's not that everybody has to be on fire for your idea. I had a lot of people saying, Steffi, this is the stupidest idea I've ever heard, but without people having ever worked with the topic, they have not read anything about it. Don't let yourself be distracted by those, but have your project team and your shareholders behind your back. Then win your ticketing partner for the idea, because as I said, it's all about communication. It's about communication in your ticketing box, and you really have to have a good communication in the front end for your guests. So it's everybody can understand with one blink how much do I pay on this day and how much do I pay on the other day. Yeah, and then you have to have the data analytics. I was so naive when I started this project. I wouldn't have done data analytics. But as I talked to experts before, and I met Franz Blechschmidt from Smart Pricer, he told me, Steffi, we need to analyze your data. And this really helps to find an idea, to find a price for our flexible prices. Yeah, and then it's the implementation. It's just one step here, but it of course takes a lot of time. Then find your internal and external communication strategy. You really have to talk to the team members who work at your ticket box. They need to be on fire they need to understand why you are changing your prices to flexible prices. Yeah, and then go online and keep your fingers crossed. So these are, in a very fast way, the steps we took. It took me 1 year to integrate the flexible prices. And in my opinion, it cannot be faster, because it really takes time to change flyers, to change the communication, to talk to the ticketing partner. Now we took some pictures from our online shop, how it looks today. So you can see we don't have one price. We say we have prices for an adult between 12 to 17 euro. So it depends on if you book online or offline, if you book in advance, or if you just show up here. And we have those flexible prices within all our guest groups. Not with the group guests. I talked about the school groups. They always have the same price every day, every time slot, but not the individual guests. My next picture shows the online shop. Here we use color coding so that our guests at a glance see where the best price is. Here we just at the moment have green and orange prices, but you can see we have price level in the mid, of course, too. So this is 1 month, and on the next slide you can see that we do have flexible prices during 1 day. As we start with a tour nearly every 15 minutes at Chocoversum, so you can, if you book early, it's a different price than you book in the midday or in the afternoon. You can already see that a lot of guests already booked in the morning, but the time slots in the evening are not that common with our guests. But of course, at 2 o'clock, everybody wants to come to us at 2 o'clock. And this is why this time is already red, because we already sold a lot of tickets for this time slot. So yeah, what did we achieve with those flexible prices? I can say that we ensured growth. We have 220,000 guests this year. We have stable prices. We make our time and price sensitive guests happy. We stretched demand peaks, and we did not exclude guest groups. So I can say that those targets are fully achieved. What is not achieved yet is the planning method, because it's not easy to cancel shift for team members, very spontaneous. So I think here we need to be more focused. And the next thing is, I already said, the weather independency. For example, Easter this year, the weather was amazing in Hamburg. It was 20 degrees. Usually those days are the best days we have in the year. This year we lost 4,000 guests in one week, just because the weather was great. So I need to say we have not fulfilled this target yet. So what do you have to keep in mind, and what did we learn? The pricing strategy needs resources. This is what someone said to me before I started the project. Steffi, you will have one person working on your prices every day. And I thought, how can I have one personal just for pricing? But at the end, we now have a ticketing manager, Sandra. She's just working with the prices and yeah, working with it every day. You will not receive more complaints. This is what I really want to focus, because we can see it. We always get complaints about the prices. If we have 70 euro, or if we have some years ago the entrance fee was 14 euros, we always received complaints. But we looked it up and we made a statistic, and we found out we don't have more complaints. What we can do now is that we can react more professional. So when someone at TripAdvisor says, your prices are very high, I pay 17 euros, we can say, when you book in advance, when you book early, it's just 12 euro. So it's really good in the communication with the guest. It is easy to increase the prices again and again. To be honest, we will change the prices next year from 70 euro to 19 euros, and the year after we will go to 20 euros. And you can do it really more flexible than you have a stable price, because then you have to change always all your communication. You don't have to do this with flexible prices. It helps you in the growing market of reseller. I think you all know this. We have more resellers selling our tickets, and yeah, it helps us to get more revenue from this part. And to be honest, I hope you can feel it. It's fun. I love it. It's really nice to talk about flexible prices and to work with it, because I think it's about guest orientation. Okay, that was my part.
Thank you, Steffi, for this insights into how you approached dynamic pricing in the Chocoversum, also the targets that you had, the project steps that you took. I think it's a really cool story, and everybody who hasn't been at the Chocoversum in Hamburg, try it out. It's really great. So Steffi, thank you very much for providing insights into your pricing project that you've done at the Chocoversum. Really great. Thank you. In the third part now of our webinar, there is the opportunity to ask questions to me or to Steffi. You have a chat function, so you have the opportunity in your Zoom to actually click on the left side. There's a chat down there, and then you can just type in your question that you have, or you send them via email, or you actually also can send them via WhatsApp or SMS if you'd like to. You can do this also during the questions now or during the chat. Feel free to just enter and drop them. We received some questions up front, and Patrick, he will now basically share some of those questions that have been raised by you before, and we try to answer them as much as possible now.
All right. Okay, so the first question that we received before goes to you, Stephanie. So someone asked him, what are the benefits of dynamic pricing for visitors, and how do they actually react if they see there are dynamic prices?
So the benefits is that we lowered the price. Before we used flexible prices, the entrance fee was 15 euros. Now, when you book in advance, when you book online, you can buy a ticket for 12 euros. So it's a lot more cheaper for those guests. And what I think is very nice too, is that they can come to different time, and the attraction is not that busy. So they have a much more nicer guest experience. That's it.
Thank you very much. Another question was for you, Franz. So it's quite common question is that we receive is like, what are the typical steps to get started to change the prices in the first place?
Yeah, and I think Steffi raised it during her presentation. So the typical steps to get started is that you, first of all, become aware that pricing is something that is good. So pricing actually is something that can help your business tremendously if you start thinking about managing them actively. Which means in the first place, I mean, Steffi described the journey internally that she took when it comes to convincing stakeholders, building up your project team. Maybe from our side that we've run more than 50 pricing projects, what steps we take basically with our partners. It all starts, first of all, with what we call data analytics / simulation. So whenever a customer of ours wants to consider dynamic pricing or flexible pricing, we try to kind of erase all the emotions out of this talk, because sometimes pricing can become very, very emotional. And we look into we look into historic data. What we use there is typically the so-called transaction data feed, which means, for example, for the last 3 to 5 years, we basically extract the data, or we get the data from the ticketing system directly, and we run our simulation analytics around this. And this is usually the starting point at phase 1, where we look together with the partner into what are the statistics, what are the patterns that we see, how would the dynamic pricing or how would the flexible pricing actually fit your own data, and we model together with the customer on their own data how the new pricing looks like. This is actually really powerful, we found, because modeling pricing on your own data is something that is a very powerful step. This is usually step number 1, and there are obviously more steps attached to it, which then comes to we need to speak about your pricing strategy. Steffi raised it earlier. What are the goals? What are the targets that you want to achieve? And we basically need to define the pricing that we develop, that this matches basically your strategy. And there's a lot to be done usually in communication, internally and externally. We need to convince together with a project team usually the stakeholders that we get an okay to kind of run a test, to go live with the first season, to prove the results. Usually you end up in pricing in a kind of, we need to prove that it works. And usually the steps are run simulation analytics on your own data, define pricing strategy, and adjust communication together with the partner, internally and externally. Those, I would say, are the typical steps. Steffi, anything to add from your side? I think
no.
The 2 steps that we took. Yeah.
All right. So we just got a question coming in for you, Stephanie. The question is, like, how do your employees at the box office react to the new pricing strategy, and like common questions they normally receive?
So at the beginning, the team members were a bit confused, but when we talked about them and Franz showed us in the beginning his slides, the flexible prices is really, it's daily life for us. And when I told them, just think about when you travel to Berlin, you go via Flixbus, they don't have stable prices, they have flexible prices. When you go by train, those have flexible prices. So for our team member, this was really, they understood, because they have it in their daily life themselves. So they understood, and they were on fire very fast. And what they have, of course, is that some older people, some senior people are a bit confused about the pricing. But to be honest, those people are confused about online ticket sales all the time. So they always need our help there. But at the end, when I talk to guests sometimes via phone, it's the same. They understand it. Flexible prices are everywhere in our daily life. So at the end, they always say, okay, like Deutsche Bahn, yeah, of course. So it's at the end, I think it's easy.
Yeah. Just one follow-up question. What communication material do you have at the box office? So do you have a price list, or do you have a screen, or how do you do this at the cashier desk?
So at the cashier desk, the price for the day is always stable. So when you come to us today and you buy a ticket, it's always 17 euro. It doesn't change within the time slot. Just when you buy a ticket for tomorrow, we have different prices. So at the end, at the ticket box office, it's the same process. It's just in the online shop. And this is why I said we have some guests who are confused calling us, because they are booking in advance and they are confused by our online shop.
Okay. There's one question that was raised in our direction. Yeah, a bit in the direction of data and what data has been used to kind of get started, because this is typically a question people don't know where to start in terms of data and how to access the data sometimes. So first of all, usually the ticketing data either you have in your own data warehouse, or it should sit with your ticketing system. They definitely have this data stream. And as said earlier, it all starts with the so-called transaction data feed. So we would rather start with, when did every single customer buy a ticket? What was the price? What was the point of sale? When did they enter the park or the museum? So this is the starting point that we take. We don't start to also show the other extremes. Sometimes we have project requests where there's, we have statistics telling us monthly sales or something like this. This would not be sufficient. From our side, we would definitely recommend to start at transaction level, because then you have all the different patterns and dynamics in it. So this is more, this is towards the data part.
Okay. Then another question for you, Stephanie, if you want to talk about it, not so much detail, but how much have the online sales increased since you have implemented dynamic pricing? And also, did it help you better plan your operations and your staff?
Yeah, this is a common question. So you always have to keep in mind, just 70% of our guests are individual guests. So it's 100 and I think 40,000 guests. And from those guests, we started with an amount of 60% who booked online. And after changing the prices, we had 25% of our guests booking online. So it was increased by 9%, which was very good and helped us already a bit in the planning method. But yeah, we want to increase this again and again every year. And I think it's common because our guests get more digital and they really like to book their tickets in advance. So I think we can be at 50% in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, there's another question also. I don't know if you want to answer this coming. So what are the, I don't know if you can share this. What are costs, expenses that are related, or that were related to you, or that were related to Chocoversum to get started? So sometimes, after understanding what steps to be taken, usually there's the question, how much do I need to invest in order to start? What do I need to do?
Yeah, the external cost weren't that high. It was about 10,000 euro. Of course, we had a lot of internal costs because it took us more personnel hours to get the strategy done and to talk with the ticketing partner, talk with the team members. So it was really a full-time project for 1 year for our team member Sandra. So it's 10,000 for 10,000 euro for external cost, but within your structure, you need to think about that one person probably needs to handle the project.
Okay.
Okay. So another question that just arrived us is, how do you determine how strong the change in price affects the ticket sales, since it's specific for every industry?
Is it a question to me or to you, Franz?
It's not a trend, but feel free to
So I understand that the question is concerning how do you measure or how do you determine if your prices are stimulating demand, if I'm not mistaken, if I read this correctly. Strongly changing metrics. Yes. Basically, so the question, Steffi, relates. It's more, I think, in our direction. It goes into the question. How does the demand is affected by a change of price? So how do we measure this? And we as Smart Pricer, we have several mechanisms to actually determine this. This depends really on industry, and this question was also relating to industry. For example, when we deploy a price optimization in the cinema industry, let's take this example, for example, we build comparable clusters. So for example, we say in 5 cinemas, we roll out dynamic pricing. 5 cinemas, we don't roll out dynamic pricing. We basically can see the KPIs, how they are affected and change. What is the change in revenue per seat that we make, for example? This is one mechanism. In the attraction business, it's obviously really hard to compare last year with this year. There's a new attraction opening around the corner. There's weather impacting, there's season impacting. So there we usually recommend to look at the at 2 KPIs. One is the average ticket price. So how much do you make per sold ticket? And obviously the load factor. Load factor on our side is defined usually by the available capacity or tickets sold over available capacity. For example, in the case of the Chocoversum, Steffi, please correct me. You have 40 slots, I believe, per guided tour. So one of the KPIs that you guys look into it, how much load do I generate per 40 people per available tour? This is one KPI. But the other really important KPI, I think you guys look into how are my ATP, so my average ticket price is developing.
And how much can I spread the guests during the day, for example, too?
Correct.
Do time slots in the morning at 9 o'clock get more booked because we have a cheaper price than those at 2 o'clock, for example?
Yeah. You can see basically based on the load factor that the demand is shifting to peak times, and all this combined basically gives you insights and KPIs and understanding how a change in price is affecting demand. But true, every industry has different price sensitivities. So the price sensitivity for the Chocoversum is definitely a different one than the ski industry or in the parking industry. There are different price sensitivity functions and per industry and even per attraction. So this is something that needs to be considered.
Okay, then maybe the last or one of the last questions for today is what are the expenses for implementing dynamic pricing?
Yeah,
the question we already had.
We've covered already.
Oh, you covered, okay.
Yeah. Data sources we've covered, prices we've covered, expenses we've covered. Yeah. Perfect. I think for now there are no active questions at the moment open, to my understanding. Yeah. So this is fine from basically, which seems we've answered most of the questions that are popping up in the head. Feel free to drop Patrick or here Patrick at Smart Pricer a note afterwards if there are still things open you want to discuss in a one-to-one chat, or if you want to have the introduction to Steffi. Feel free to drop us also a note that we connect. Overall, I'd like to close this webinar with 3 key takeaways from our side and this webinar. First of all, if you go into the pricing journey, so if you decide, okay, pricing is something I would like to pursue, be aware that first of all, consider segmentation, which is also the product. I mean, for example, if you check out the Chocoversum homepage of Steffi, she definitely starts first of all with selecting different products. There's an English guided tour, so there are different products that you can offer to your customer. So differentiate your prices by product and by booking behavior. So incentivize online incentivize pre-booking. So this is something you definitely should consider right away in the next session that you have internally with your sales and marketing team. The second one, which I'm very, very emotional about because I see a lot of buzz in the market at the moment, dynamic pricing. There's a lot of ticketing systems, web shop suppliers. There's a lot of buzz at the moment going on in every industry around dynamic pricing. I can just strongly recommend you to base your pricing on data. So do spend the time on A, extracting the right data, and B, spend the time internally or externally with a supplier or with a partner on defining your strategy on data. Because otherwise, I think this can go really in the wrong direction. We have examples where companies entered into price wars and price dumping because they want to aggressively pull people on the web shops. So there's something to consider, and I'm very emotional about this. So please base your pricing on data. This is a very strong recommendation from our side, because we've seen if you don't do this, there's some risk attached to it. And the third point is be transparent and actively communicate your pricing strategy and your pricing model. And this accounts not only external to your customers, because we have a lot of good examples with Chocoversum or with other examples, how you can do this, how you can communicate transparent and actively externally, but it's also equally important to onboard your project team internally, because they are the spokesman. They are, if your box office is not on board, they are the first point of contact with your consumer if they walk into your shop or if they walk up on the box office. They need to understand what's going on. They need to feel very secure and why, for example, Chocoversum started the dynamic pricing journey. So those would be our 3 key takeaways that we would recommend you. So differentiate prices by product and booking behavior. Data, please do this, and be transparent and communicate actively. There's nothing bad around pricing, and trust us, your visitors will understand if you communicate this correctly. There's sometimes visitors and consumers, they will understand, trust us, if you do this correctly. All right, I think from our side, this is it. So thank you very much for joining our webinar, and we hope to hear back from you, also with feedback, what you've liked, what you didn't like. Feel free to drop us a note, and we are very looking forward to hearing back from all of you. Special thank you to you, Steffi. Greetings to Hamburg.
Thank you.
Most of you, I would say, maybe we step by on the IAPA. Just a short note. There's also a keynote hosted by Steffi and also including us on more details around dynamic pricing, how you can use this in. How you can use dynamic pricing in boosting revenue and customer satisfaction. This is happening also in Paris next week.